Would you like to be somebody who understands how modern people suffer from dissociation? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how the mind and body are out of sync and how the modern people have a distorted image of reality. Before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life altogether. Let's get into it. So, dissociation is a phenomenon where you can become out of touch with reality. You lose sort of your ability to accurately interpret reality becomes distorted, let's say. And or if your mind and body, which are obviously connected, whether they become departed from one another. For example, if you have pain in your body, you might not detect it in your mind, in your brain, and then you are dissociated in some sense. So there can be different variations of it. But I think modern people frequently suffer from dissociation in each three, through the mind, the body, and their ability to relate to reality. I think modern people suffer through these channels quite frequently. So first I'm going to talk about their ability to connect with reality. Okay. I think a lot of modern people in the West, in Western societies, are misaligned with reality. They do not see the interconnectedness of reality, and especially, for example, the consequences of their actions. They do not act accordingly to the existence of the butterfly effect, for example. They do not see how the trajectory of the world depends on their actions. They do not see how their own behavior has serious ethical implications. Perhaps they do not want to take the responsibility for their actions. That may likely be it, but generally, I don't think they face the fact that they're continually influencing the world. And now this is a very specific example, because I made a video recently on the shallowness of modern people, how they have a sort of quite a myopic view of the interconnectedness of the world and how their actions are interrelated to enormous ripple effects. And that is, I think, the nature of reality. It is very intertwined, and if you do not notice that, or do not recognize it consciously, then you become somehow dissociated, and you operate on a very, low resolution level. Like you're very clouded, very clouded in your mind, and you do not grasp the network that the intense network of the universe, of reality, let's say. Okay, second reason why modern people are dissociated, I think they are frequently out of touch with their body. They do not comprehend that their body is almost like an independent being from their mind, or like an extension of their mind also. The body is very sensitive and feels deeply, almost autonomously, like on top of the mind, the body feels. And it is sensitive in that it absorbs stimuli from the environment at all times. It gets, when you overstimulate it, it gets exhausted essentially and suffers. So things like a lot of alcohol, drugs, high stimulating activities like sex are absorbed by the body. And the body has a memory, a very, very deep, large memory, and almost larger than your brain's memory. Because, for example, let's say when you were a child, your mother always cooked this special dish that you really liked, and it had a very certain smell. And then later on in life, you're walking down the street and you smell the same smell coming out of a restaurant, and you immediately click and you notice, you remember what smell it was, but that was because your body autonomously stored the scent of the smell in your body. And it noticed it without your mind doing it. It detected the same stimuli again, and so your body stores a lot of memory. So if you overstimulate it, the memory sort of expands and expands like a balloon, and it eventually there's only so much you can process or store, and when it becomes too much, I think your body becomes very confused and volatile. Not stable. There's too much going on, essentially. And I think that the question really is, I got this from Sadhguru. He's I'm not sure whether he's religious or not, but a guru on YouTube who has excellent advice, and he said, the question is, would you want your body or your mind to be in control? If you want your mind to be in control, try and reduce the stimuli that is entering your body and making your body the key, let's say, the key initiator of your life. Or if you want your mind to be it, then reduce the body stimuli, the amount of information your body is absorbing, and let your mind do the adventure, And so I think generally humans are unaware of the sensitivity of their body and hence are dissociated. And finally, the third variable is that the mind is dissociated from the body and reality. I think many humans, especially adolescents, are mentally dissociated because of their overconsumption of social media. They mentally live in a world that is perfect, or a world that they want to be perfect. Obviously, you've heard this many times. They see other people living perfect lives and they want to also live like that. And the perfection in their scope, the one that they're aiming at, is misaligned with reality. Reality is far from perfect. It is always balanced between two poles, good and bad, light and dark, left and right. It is never unidimensional. It is never perfect. And just based on the previous two examples, the mind is out of sync with the body and out of touch with reality. And I was thinking about this recently. I think depending on the type of information you consume, you become more dissociated or more associated. And with associated, I mean your mind and body being in sync and being in touch with reality. If you absorb a lot of information and content that is distorted, not aligned, not a accurate representation, or at least relatively accurate representation of reality, because we don't know what precisely reality means, but I think there's a scale. You can get closer to it or farther away from it. And the closer the information, the content is to reality that you consume, the more associated you become, and the more distorted, unrealistic content you consume, I think the more dissociated you become. So for example, if you consume a lot of Instagram and a lot of, I think, YouTubers who portray a false reality of their lives, what springs to mind is someone like David Dobrik. I mean, I know he actively says that, his scenes his videos are partially scripted and acted, but still, I mean, the watchers, I think a lot of them don't know that, and they think that's how he lives, and he has this awesome life, and it looks so much fun, and they want that. But then you build this high expectation, you adopt these unrealistic expectations that which your mind adopts then, and it sort of builds it out further and constructs this universe that is detached from reality. It is not an accurate representation of what life is. Whereas if you consume content and books, for example, that are more accurate representations of human nature, of human reality, what springs to my mind now is Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian novelist, which I'm currently reading, and it's more of a mix of what reality is, and it speaks to you like what Jordan Peterson says. If you read these books, they change your psyche, they change the way you think. And when I first heard Jordan say that, I was like, how's a book going to change the way I think? But this really, I'm reading the Brothers Karamazov. It, like, whilst you're reading it, you're part of the story, and it really molds your mind, your thought processes, your knowledge, and your perspective on life. It really changes it, and it feels at least real, like it's somewhat reality, because it is relatively dark also. There's suffering in it, there's pain, and it's more of it seems like a closer representation of, a more accurate representation of reality. And if you consume more of this content, I think you become more associated. So obviously it is quite difficult to be in sync all of the time, and I think it is essentially impossible because we have so much, our brain as consciousness has the ability to distort itself with, the ego. I mean, not the Jungian ego, but, your arrogance, like ego, your identity, your persona, sort of complexes and other factors that manipulate your mind. But you can influence the distance you have to the truth in regards to your mind and body being in sync and being in touch with reality. It does lie in your control to a degree. So in conclusion, modern people are relatively dissociated because they do not understand the complexity, or they do understand the complexity, but not how interconnected reality is, and how it is the structure of reality, let's say, and how cause and effect occur, and how there are ripples, the butterfly effect, for example, ripples going on as a consequence of their actions. Secondly, they're out of touch with their body. They do not understand how the body is almost like an independent being that absorbs a lot of information and is always absorbing information continuously. And the more stimuli you give it, the more, let's say, confused and exhausted it becomes, and the more volatile it becomes then, and it sort of guides you then, because it might seek more pleasure, and that will overpower your mind then, and your body will be in control if you overstimulate it instead of your mind, I think. And then you become dissociated because your body you're not taking care of your body, let's put it like that. And thirdly, I think a lot of people nowadays consume content and information that is distorted and a false representation of reality through media, through channels like Instagram and YouTube, for example. People who vlog and script or portray an unrealistic representation of their life, and then people adopt these unrealistic expectations, and their mindset towards life becomes departed from what you should really be expecting out of life. And then, of course, one of the happiness equations is happiness equals reality minus expectations. So if your expectations are lower than reality than what actually occurs, you become happy. But if your expectations are higher than what actually occurs, you become unhappy then. Yeah, and people are just dissociated because they consume distorted content. And I think if you consume more realistic, accurate, content like some certain novels, then I think you become more associated, in touch with with reality, and your mind and body become in sync. So please leave a comment below whether you agree with my perspective on these three: the mind, body, and reality, or people being dissociated from them, especially modern people. And what do you have any ideas on how to become more associated, apart from just consuming realistic content and information like I have proposed? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.